Welcome to the next chapter of As the Story Grows. I'm Brandtson. This week, Golden Streets of Paradise drummer Adam Boose joins the show. Adam is also the mastering engineer who runs Cauliflower Audio. Adam has been the man remastering the Steadfast Records, Zao and Brandtson reissues. Golden Streets of Paradise just released their second full-length record, Throes, which is out now on Steadfast Records. Adam chats about his love for synthesizers that fueled his musical expression, the journey that led him to join Brandtson, and finding the freedom to create what makes you happy. This was a fun conversation, and I could have nerded out with Adam about mastering for way longer than we got into. So I hope you guys enjoy this week's chat with Adam Boose.
Got my Judas Priest mug. I mean,
Nice.
how are you doing this morning, man?
Good. I'm good. Yeah.
Good. Are you in DC?
I'm in Philly.
Philly. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought you were in DC for some reason.
I might be back. That's where I'm from originally.
Oh, okay.
Might be back there in a few months. So,
I gotcha.
but yeah.
Didn't you work? You worked for NPR there?
Yeah.
That's cool.
It was fun. Good
I'm
times.
sure things like the current state of things are just fucking completely bonkers for you, especially being in Philly on the night of election and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything is surreal. Yeah.
Yeah. I was asking my therapist this morning. I was like, sometimes I wonder if, like, am I dead? And is it just hell? Or it's so bizarre. And I've had that conversation with other friends before. And it's just like, everything is so bizarre. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I was like watching impeachment trial stuff yesterday, and they're sharing the videos, and I'm like, and we all just like went on like nothing happened the next day. Like,
I know.
we all moved
man.
on.
It's so bizarre.
How did that happen?
Yeah. I remember when they shut down the schools here, and I was like, oh my God, they shut all the schools down. This must be serious.
Yeah.
And then it's just been like nonstop parade of complete mania.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully we're coming out of it.
I hope so. I was telling Matt, the distribution center in Philly for the Postal Service is like super fucked. So my copy of Throes has been there for a month now. And I was like, I guess I got to listen on Spotify now.
Right. Well, thanks. I mean, that puts our numbers up there. So.
Yeah, you know.
Now we had 6 listens instead of 5.
There you go. Well, I'm stoked to talk to you today.
Yeah, man.
It's going to be fun. Are you from Ohio originally?
I am. I grew up kind of out where the Brandtson guys did, but I'm a little more of a. They kind of are from like the Lorain County-ish area, like Elyria and stuff, and I'm from Erie County. Okay. So I'm like, I was always considered the country bumpkin of the group. Like I grew up in like all white school, super racist, like cornfields and farmers and stuff. And I mean, I love the country and I would live there again. But, and actually I moved back, not into the country, but I moved farther away from the city at the beginning of the pandemic. So, but yes, short answer, I'm kind of from the Oberlin area. Oberlin College is kind of out there, and that's kind of where weird kids went. If you're from the country, you went to hang out with students and meet people that weren't all like crazy, ignorant, racist, So yeah, I am from Ohio.
Yeah, you kind of talked about growing up a little bit. What got you into music? Were you like a music kid or teen?
Yeah,
was that something you.
My neighbors across the street, they were like teenagers, and they were into Kiss and like heavy metal. And I mean, I was like 5, and my mom would let me go play over there. And I think I must have saw their Kiss records, because from that point on, I was like obsessed with Kiss.
Nice.
And yeah, I still have a couple of the records from there. And I guess that would probably be it. Just seeing, I remember I would go through black crayons all the time because I would just draw like Kiss. And so yeah, I don't know. There was like a little goth kid like in me, like from very early on.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I would say Kiss. And yeah, I've always been like kind of a shy kid. I had friends and stuff, but I was more the kid that would like kind of, draw and kind of be by himself.
The stereotypical artsy shy kid.
Right. Yeah, listen to music because nobody understands me, man.
Right.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Good times. Did you play an instrument? Did you start like with piano or in school band or something?
I did. I took a couple saxophone lessons, but I remember like early on, my dad kind of explained, and he wasn't a musician, but I remember he like played as a kid. He played like bass or something, and he kind of showed me how to basically drums. You count with your left hand, you hit the snare with your right, and you hit, and just basically from that, I kind of just, sort of, taught myself, I guess. Yeah. I started collecting. I remember it was I think I was in middle school, and some guy from Cleveland that came, and he had a one-man band, and he had like samplers and old drum machine. They weren't old drum machines. This was probably like 1985 or 86. And he had like the top of the line synths, and he came in and like, he was like showing his stuff to like the assembly. And I remember that just blowing my mind that you could like make music by yourself.
Yeah.
And so then there was like a really, really, really shitty guitar. I won't say the name, and it's fine. But like there was a guitar shop, and everything was super overpriced. But they had, I think it was like a Roland old like TR, I don't know, maybe 505 or something. And I just remembered like playing it in there and hearing drum samples, and just like my mind was just like a whole new world,
Yeah.
And I just kind of got obsessed with like electronic stuff at that point,
That's cool.
But I could never really afford anything MIDI. So they just kind of like Casio and, my, dual cassette tape recorder, and just kind of making stuff that way.
That's cool. Yeah, it was great when all that stuff went USB and you didn't have to have all these MIDI controllers anymore.
Right. Yeah. But honestly, I kind of went in the opposite direction a couple years ago. I was doing everything in Reason, and then I kind of went back hardware. So like all of my hardware stuff is in another room right now. But yeah, I busted out the MIDI cables after like years and years. And there is something kind of satisfying about like banging stuff out from a bunch of pieces of gear,
Yeah. So was that your like lane into playing music, just figuring things out yourself and doing solo stuff, or were you like, I'm going to take this into a band setting and do something crazy?
No, I've always been very shy, and also just because I grew up in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
There weren't kids that were like me that I was going to school with, and I hadn't even really come out at that time. So I was very like kind of an inward kid, smart, but I didn't really do extracurricular activities. I just kind of tried to stay away from the rednecks as much as possible. And, but yeah, I started collecting, like I finally got like a MIDI keyboard and a sequencer from the bookstore in Oberlin. The college bookstore. They had a guy that could order electronic equipment from a catalog. So I would read about like the sequencer and beg my parents to buy it for me, like for Christmas. Yeah. And so, yeah, I feel like every Christmas I got like another teeny little piece, a component, maybe a pedal or something. And then like when I was like 14 or 15, my school district merged with another one, which was a little more, I mean, it's still like in the middle of fucking nowhere, but it was I mean, they had like maybe a gas station and a country store,
Nice.
so, and a video store. So, I met another kid who was like into heavy metal, and he was also a complete black sheep, and he had long hair and like a denim trench coat, and like satanic stuff like scribbled all over his books. And I don't know, somehow that just like, we just somehow like just fit together, and our relationship was kind of based on humor and just trying to survive that, being kind of weird kids in the country.
Yeah.
So, you know, I got interested in like a lot of like kind of occult and like taboo stuff out there. I think just to kind of protect myself.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like a lot of people do that, will kind of take on like kind of hard images so they don't get their asses kicked.
Right.
You know? So I feel like that was kind of part of that, you know. But yeah, so he wrote poetry and like played like Dungeons and Dragons. So we just kind of started a band, and that was kind of like my first foray into like having a band.
Yeah. That's cool.
Like, played in backyards and stuff.
Yeah. Is that what eventually morphed into Furnace Street? Yeah. So he and I had a falling out, and right around like senior year in high school, I started recording demos of my own that were more serious. They weren't like funny songs. And so, yeah, I started just kind of recording stuff on my own. And yeah, Furnace Street was sort of like, I went to school in Pittsburgh. I went to the Art Institute, and I went there for audio production. And I knew I wanted to do something in the music field. So I went there and I studied that. And just around that same time, I just kept kind of recording little demos and stuff in my apartment there. And then when I moved back, I got a couple of my friends to like that were musicians to just play bass and keyboards. Yeah. And that's kind of how we did that. And so we started writing music together, and basically Furnace Street was it started as my thing, and it kind of ended as a duo with myself and my friend Lisa. And it's funny, all the people that I made music with all those years ago, like they're still all completely a part of my life. Like I still all talk to all the Brandtson guys, and it's like an insular little thing. We have a hard time finding people that are like-minded here. I don't know what it is. Maybe that's just the way life is, but yeah, so that was kind of, Furnace, the first band kind of morphed into Furnace Street. And I did that for about 10 years. I met Matt Traxler from Brandtson. My first real job out of college was at an A to Z Audio, which is a cassette duplicating place. They're still like one of the few places in the world that still do it. Yeah.
And I got a job there, and Matt started working there a couple years later, and I met him, and we connected over a really messed up joke. And our whole friendship has kind of basically been like really out there kind of humor. He's a complete maniac. I love him, but like I just love him to pieces. And just that's kind of how I met those guys. And I would play my demos for Matt and stuff, and he was really interested. And he's always just been very supportive of anything I've done creatively.
Yeah, that's cool.
And Yeah, it was amazing because we didn't really have a lot of that. So Lisa and I felt really fortunate that he kind of put out our first record, and we pushed really hard for 10 years. We really tried to do the touring circuit. And I think it never really quite caught on. And I think it was kind of like synth pop before that whole kind of post-punk synth pop thing happened. And also it just, I don't know. I can't listen to it. Like, I'm embarrassed of like my voice and my lyrics, and you won't see me fronting a band ever again. I'm proud of the music that we worked on. But yeah, it's very hard for me to listen to that stuff. So I 10 years of really pushing that. Our last record that we put out independently, we almost had a teeny little label agree to put it out in California. Yeah. And we were so excited. And then like somehow I screwed it up. And so then we basically, I'd had enough. I was just like, fuck this. I'm sick of being poor. I'm sick of like putting all my money into this. And I basically decided to kind of quit trying to make music. I got a second job, and I was just like, I'm going to try to get out of debt. I'm going to try to get my life back together. And that's when John Sayer from Brandtson left the band. Like Furnace Street used to kind of open for Brandtson. We did some like kind of weekend touring here and there. But then John, I think, kind of got to the same point where he was kind of over it's brutal, man. And I can't even imagine what it's like now, like,
oh yeah.
I give people a lot of credit that like kind of like sacrifice everything for that, because it's just like anything else. But
yeah, it's amazing that people keep doing it, because we all know that it sucks and you're not going to be you know, Iron Maiden or Judas Priest or whatever. And, so
yeah, I mean, but I think there's that hope that anytime you put a record out, there's just that hope that it's going to catch. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, like, I'm at a point in my life and in my career where I don't really want that life anymore. I don't want to tour. I don't want to sleep on floors. I even sleep in hotels and all that stuff. I mean, if all the expenses were paid and it was great, sure, I would love it. But I feel very fortunate that I get to do what I do for a living, because it's still in the music industry.
Yeah.
So I feel super thankful for that. So I try not to get too greedy about like success. You know, it's like if people like what we do and people truly connect with it, then it doesn't matter if there's 1 or 100 people, because if they're truly connecting to it, it does the same thing, I think.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
That's cool. So yeah, you're talking about Brandtson and
so yeah, they called me out to a practice. So I went out there, and it was under the guise of just joining as like a synth player and like just to kind of help them. They wanted to go in a different direction for Hello Control. They had already started writing demos that were kind of more dancey, and just maybe a little more poppy and that sort of thing. So when I got out there, I just thought it was that. But then they were like, well, it turns out that John literally just like put in his notice that he's not playing with us anymore. So do you want to play bass also? And I said, sure. And so like my retirement from music was like
short-lived,
a month. Yeah. And I never really got the chance to do like real touring where it's like, you know, you're not going home for a few weeks. And so I joined that band. I've always been able to play just I can play most like rock instruments, not great, but I can fudge it pretty easy.
Yeah.
So but bass was also kind of my first real instrument that I got after learning how to play drums. I had never quite decided like if I wanted to be a singer or play guitar or play bass. So I just kind of have done it all. And I find that drums is the most exciting for me. But so yeah, so I joined Brandtson before before the recording of Hello Control, and so we started meeting at the practice space, and I brought synths and my bass and stuff, and we started kind of working on stuff, and it was really organic. I think just because I had known them already for so long, and I wasn't super aware of a lot of the like kind of emo scene that was going on. Like I said, I came more from like electronic, sort of industrial was the big scene that I got into as a kid, or as like a 15-year-old. And I was always kind of anti-guitar. I don't know why. It just seemed like it had been done.
Yeah.
And
you're one of those people.
Yeah, I am one of those people. I own guitars, and but at the time, but at the time I was very much like anti-guitar, especially, and I'm still to this day, like if you put a guitar in an industrial style band, I'm probably not going to like it. Because they're all like fucking like, shitty metal riffs, and it's never like inventive or interesting. So anyway, so I wasn't super familiar with that stuff, but I think I started getting into like I saw Jawbox perform, and that stuff, like the DC hardcore, post-hardcore, that stuff made more sense to me because it was really inventive and kind of out there, like Shudder to Think and all that stuff. But I do, we do have like crossovers. Like Mike and Jared are both like from that. Mike is a Skinny Puppy fan, and like Jared was too. So we kind of had that, and they're also like into the kind of Jawbox DC scene. So I think we kind of connected there, and it just, like I said, it was very organic writing with them. So we wrote the record. Trying to think how it came out. I can't remember, but I know my first actual show with them was at South by Southwest, and I think You Will Know Us by the Trail of the Dead played before us, and then Not a Surf played after us. Nice. This is my first time like playing on like it was a big show. I was in charge of like getting the click track to Jared, in charge of running all the synths and everything, and like they had never done this too, and it was so like I barely remember it happening. I was so like freaked out, but we got through it, and that was like my first experience with that. And then I think that was after we recorded the record. I can't remember that. I think it might have been, but we recorded in Eudora, Kansas with Ed Rose. No, I think that was in December of 2005. So maybe we played after. At any rate, that was another one of those experiences that we went out to Eudora to record at Black Lodge with Ed. And Ed also had those old 80s industrial background, and I don't he wasn't recording that stuff, but I think anybody that was kind of that age coming up in that time, you were at least somewhat familiar. The skater kids listened to like all of that stuff. It wasn't really as divided as it is now. But I learned so much in that. We were there for 3 weeks, and like I'd never been really in a serious recording studio with a real producer. So like whether Ed knew it or not, he was like kind of a mentor to me. Just watching all that stuff happen and just seeing how a real record is made. So I was exposed to like techniques and stuff that I'd never been aware of. I learned how to truly collaborate with the Brandtson guys. Mike and Jared were like the main songwriters, but it was more of a collaborative effort. And coming from Furnace Street, where I was like the guy that directed everything, and I wrote I wrote all the lyrics, most of the music. coming into that, I learned how to collaborate with people, and I learned so much from those years. And like I said, very thankful for those guys to give me that experience, because I still use a lot of the things that I learned to this day. And like, that was just such a crazy experience, because that was when Brandtson was like, it's either kind of make it or break it for them at that point. And like, we were like on MTV2, and like, we were charting like in San Diego, and it seemed like things could have happened. What that means at this point, I don't know. I mean, I feel like if it had happened, I feel like all four of us would still be where we are today.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think like it would have changed our lives that much. Just the music business is so fickle.
Yeah. I think it was Matt or Mike, one of them, when they were on, said that was like the best selling record for the band ever, but it was like the most hated as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like well, no, that's not true. I never quite got the blame. Nobody ever really pointed the finger at me, but I was always worried.
The new guy.
This is the fucking, yeah. So I'm always like, hey, they wrote Nobody Dances Anymore before I even walked in. So like, that wasn't me. Yeah, so I toured with them off and on for a year, and they already kind of knew that, like, if it didn't work, then, you know, we were all going to kind of go home and do something else.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what happened. I mean, but I got to play in theaters. Like, we opened for Paramore on a tour, and like, you know, playing in like 2,000 seat venues. Like,
yeah.
It was such an amazing, but then we also played in some of the fucking shittiest places ever. And the whole thing was a really amazing experience. I'm super thankful for it, but it's like any one of those really formative experiences in your life. I would not want to go back to that time.
Right.
I was miserable. I was so shy. I was so afraid of people. I was married at the time, and so I couldn't even like be like a single guy being a mess out on the road. Like, and not that that's really in my character anyway, but like, it just was, it wasn't for me. I learned that, but I'm glad that I got that experience, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, so we did what we did. We came home, took a break for a while, and we talked about recording another record. And we did we got together for a few sessions, and we kind of recorded some quick ideas. But we never really completed much of anything. And we just, I don't know. I think we played our last show at the Grog Shop. I can't even remember what year it was, 2007 at this point. And then it just was over. And we all just decided to like kind of go our separate ways and do our thing, get jobs and beg our jobs to take us back and all that stuff. Go work at Starbucks, you know. And yeah, so that's what that's kind of how that all ended. But Jared kind of got out of music. John is still, I think John still kind of messes around with music. I don't really talk to the two of those guys too much, but they're also kind of doing their own thing. John's in a different state now. And but I still see Mike, like, well, pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
You know, but
you're in a band together, so you know.
What's that?
You're in a band together, so you know.
You know, I have to see the guy
occasionally.
Otherwise, I would never pick up the phone. Yeah. So then what? So I guess we started getting a little antsy, and I think I can't remember how the idea of getting sort of getting back together, but doing a completely different project. And I think Mike kind of had the concept for Swarm of Bats, which was just like sort of a garage punk, like 50s, 60s horror vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just was super fun. And we wrote all of those songs really quick. It was me. It wasn't. I started playing drums because Jared wasn't interested. John came back into town. He played bass, and then it was Mike and Matt. And but it was way louder, way less pretty. But I think it was just a way for us to like get back into enjoying making music again.
Yeah.
And just allowing it to be like, I feel like we kind of ripped off the Hot Snakes a little bit. We were all into that at that point, but those records are so good. And so that's kind of where that was at. And we just we decided not to really try to tour or anything, or we recorded a record, and I don't even think we made physical copies. I can't remember. But yeah, it was just,
there's that like 4-song cassette demo that Matt sends out to people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I mean, the full length is on Bandcamp.
Yeah. 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 And I would love to have that record like on vinyl someday, but like, I feel like it was so, I think like what happened with Brandtson, and we don't really at this point in our career, I think it's kind of like, we don't really count on people that were into Brandtson at one point.
Yeah.
Like, some people follow on and continue on, but I'm the same way. Like if a band breaks up and they change, or they do put out a solo record, I might check out the stuff, but if it's not exactly what they did, or if it's not something that super speaks to me, you just kind of, you pass on it. So I get it. But I think that just the change from like, Send Us a Signal to Hello Control kind of changed people. And then when we did Swarm of Bats, it was just such a completely different thing.
Yeah.
That I think some people liked it, but it kind of turned people off. And then I think that just kind of fell apart on its own. I think John wanted to move. Honestly, I can't even remember how we decided to not do that anymore. I think it just was, people got tired coming to the practice space like on their day off, and you spend more time smoking cigarettes. We all smoked cigarettes back then. Like everybody I know smoked cigarettes back then. It's so crazy. Nobody does now.
I know.
It's so bizarre. But we would go and smoke cigarettes and talk, drink coffee, and run through the set and be like, all right, let's go home. It just kind of lost its thing. And then, so yeah, I think that was like, I don't know, 2010, maybe ish, 2000. I don't know. The years kind of blend together at this point. But I know that like Mike and I are like, our birthdays are 3 days apart. And I feel like we both have this sort of the Scorpio energy.
Yeah.
We're both kind of like just who we are. And we're always working on something. I always get the happiest when I've made something and I can like look at it or listen to it. And I think he's very much the same way, where we're just kind of like, I don't know what Mike's growing up situation was, but I have to assume that he was like me and like not a ton of friends and just kind of like insular, kind of did his thing.
Yeah.
So he and I just started getting itching to do it again, and John wasn't in town, and we talked about kind of putting together a version of Swarm of Bats again with like a synth bass, and asked Matt if he was interested in that. And I don't think he was super interested. And but Mike and I wanted to do something, and we didn't really want. Well, when you're in a band with two people, it's a lot easier to do because there's only two people making decisions. There's only two people to get to come to practice. It's easier to do something that is focused. So Mike and I just kind of started getting together. He would come over to my house and he would bring a guitar, and maybe I would play bass or something. And we would just kind of like hash out structures for like, we kind of wanted to the first Golden Streets thing. We wanted to do something that was kind of like Nirvana with the presets. So kind of like big distorted bass, not super dancey, but like aggressive and kind of punky. So it was kind of came from the Swarm of Bats idea. Like some of the later stuff we started doing was a little noisier and more serious. And that's just kind of how that came to be, you know? We just kind of, you know, we just thought, well, I'll play drum. We'll write these songs together. You know, you can sing and play guitar. I'll play drums, and we'll just, you know, have the bass tracks on backing tracks. And we bring as many amps as we can with us to the shows and just like overload people with the sound. And like, I mean, we have like too many amps on stage for two people. But that was another thing I learned as like an audio guy.
Yeah.
Is that trusting the house sound guy with an electronic band is just a recipe for disaster. So we brought all of our monitoring and everything. So we would take that kind of out of the equation. No dissing house. A lot of my friends are house recording engineers. But it just, you know, especially for like a place, you know, they might not know how to run it. So that was kind of the idea. We wanted it to sound really good. The production has always been super important to us.
Guys just put out your second full-length, Throes, via Steadfast Records. This record seems more raw and stripped down. It's poppier, less like dark and brooding, even though I feel like the press was like the darker, brooding Golden Street. And I was like, that's not what this record is. It's like more uplifting.
Well, that's interesting. It's hard to know because we're inside of it, but like, see, Matt was kind of like, handles a lot of the promotional materials. So we just kind of like
hands off.
Let him know. And that's actually, you know, honestly, I was really excited to hear what you were going to say, because that's the most exciting part to me, to hear like what people are taking from it.
Yeah.
So I guess it was written sort of the same way the first record was, in that a few of the songs was actually us sitting in a room and figuring out the structures. And then, you know, we each write a couple songs. And that's just kind of how a record comes together. You know? Mike writes almost virtually all the lyrics. We kind of share the music writing duties. I kind of handle a lot of the production end of stuff. And that's just like the team that we have. It works really good together. We're kind of like an evil Steely Dan or an evil Play, maybe. It's hard to say like how it just kind of came around organically. I mean, we worked really hard on this record, but we produced the whole thing pretty much ourselves. I mean, we hired the same people to record the live instruments because I'm not a tracking engineer.
Okay.
I'm not a mix engineer either, and I actually hate doing either of those things. But you know, as we were finishing up the recording process, we had a guy that was going to mix the record, and I think we'd gotten so attached to the way the demos sounded that when we heard anything that was different, it was kind of shocking.
Yeah.
And it kind of, not only that, but COVID was just starting to hit. And, you know, I had moved all of my equipment to my house. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get in my studio. And I'm like, I don't even know if I'm going to have a career in a couple months. Yeah. So we just kind of made the decision. We're just like, we don't even know if this record's going to be able to come out. So let's just finish it ourselves. You know, like we can't really afford to put the money into it. So, Mike and I kind of mixed it together, but it was very hands off. Like because I'm not a mix engineer, I don't enjoy it. And I didn't want to ruin my own personal enjoyment of the music. Yeah. So I didn't want to, like, every time I listen to it, hear my mistakes.
Yeah.
So we tried to record the best sounds that we could, and didn't really manipulate a ton. And I'm very proud of the way it came out. I mean, it sounds like it's a dark sounding record. It's kind of muddy. It's not super produced. It's not super loud. And as a mastering engineer, those are the things that, like, I don't want to do to somebody's record. Yeah. Like, I want to keep it, I want it to sound professional. I want it to sound modern. I want it to, like, be sparkly and punchy and all those things that people want. When it came time to master my own record, I was like, I don't want to fucking smash this.
Yeah.
It disappears. Or, like, you know, it loses all the impact. Or, like, if you cut out too much of the low mids, like, it takes away all the emotion. Or if you, like, edit the fuck out of the performances, like, there was something about, like, listening to our demos that were just wide open and honest. Mm-hmm. I mean, and look, we fixed a lot of shit on the record. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. Like, it wasn't like you put up a mic and it was done. Like, yeah. But knowing how most records are made nowadays, I know that what we did was significantly less than, I mean, you know, most records today, you know, the drums are EQ'd on the way in. They're EQ'd in the box. They're compressed in the box, and they go through a bus compressor, and then
they're all replaced.
and then they're all replaced. And then it comes to me, the mastering guy, and it goes through another couple layers of compression. And it's like, I can't remember who said it, but I read a quote. It was probably 15 years ago now, but somebody said, like, kids are growing up today not knowing what a snare drum really sounds like.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, because you hear the records and they're loud and they sound good. I like loud records, but you're not feeling that air moving because there's no dynamics to it. So I had to, I think, not to get too personal, but I think coming out of the closet helped me let go of a lot of self-consciousness and doubts in my head. So I was able to let go of some of things that weren't perfect. Yeah. I think just the whole and maybe that's not the whole thing. I think just getting older, having experiences, the experience with the Brandtson guys taught me how to collaborate with people. It's all processes and steps in the process, but I think learning how to shut off those editing voices in your head makes life so much more enjoyable. If and you're afraid to not trust that voice, but sometimes that voice, you shouldn't trust it. Sometimes it's the voice that's telling you that you're no good, you're a failure, you're going to fail, and that has no place in writing music. That is the opposite of what should be happening in music. Music should be coming from within. It should flow. And I know that sounds like hokum and spiritual nonsense, but it's the truth. It's like it's like when you get in the flow, and like my relationship with music now as a 45-year-old dude is so much better. When I play guitar or drums or whatever, I feel like I even understand more about music, and it's because it's learning how to let go. And I mean, there's certain things in everybody's life that you don't know how to let go of, but like that's one of the things I think growing up, if you just realize that none of that shit really matters and just try to shut it up and just do it, because that's where the best stuff comes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you reach that age where you're like, well, I fucking like it, so that's good enough, right? Like,
right. And like, oh my God, if this person doesn't like it, but then you think, yeah, that person isn't even thinking about me.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not even crossing their mind. What do I worry about what they care? You know, people are so involved in themselves that nobody fucking cares what I'm doing over here. Yeah.
But I'm a big fan of Throes. Yeah, I think World War sounded like gothic Brandtson to me, and this just seems like something different, right? I like the rawness, the openness to it.
Yeah,
I don't know if you as a mastering engineer feel like music is kind of going back where everything is not like crushed and it's super loud anymore these days. Like there's more dynamics coming in, and records aren't just like pinging the red line.
I think that's true to a certain extent. I mean, I don't think any pop music or anything on a major label is going to be. I'm already starting to get inundated with cats. There's another one over here sneaking in.
Nice.
Major label stuff is still going to be smashed. There's still, people are like, oh, well, you should aim for however many LUFs or whatever, and like, we got to end the loudness war. But no big mastering guys are doing that.
Yeah.
I have 2 cats here right now. But I think indie stuff, like you said, masters I'm noticing they're a lot darker. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot like the top, and maybe that's because people think that analog doesn't have a lot of top end. So they're trying to, but if you don't EQ the drums at every step of the way, they're going to be kind of dark. And if you balance everything else to that, you're just going to have a darker sounding record. Yeah. I think you're right. I think it is going back on that to a certain extent. Yeah.
Cool. How'd you get into mastering and that as your audio focus?
That job that I worked at with Matt, I started working in like the mail room.
Yeah.
Like everybody does. And then I just kind of, over the next couple of years, I moved around in the various departments of that place. And then the guy that did the mastering there, and it was very like very basic sound designer and like the first set of Waves plugins, like the native power pack, which is like 4 plugins.
Oh yeah.
And I ended up just kind of browbeating them to let me do that job. And it was basically just making sure that like cassettes would duplicate properly, or that the discs were authored right, or, and so it was kind of like just like almost like an assembly line thing. But the more I started doing it, the more I really got interested in it, and realizing that like you can really I don't want to say make or break because everybody says that, but you can really make a record sound really awesome.
Yeah.
And I just started getting really fascinated by that. I think I was working there when I went with Brandtson, and then when I came back, they hired me back. I think that's how it went. And so I worked there for a couple of years as the mastering guy. And then I just kind of wanted to take it to the next level. And they I don't think that their idea was the same as mine. So like I ended up quitting there, and I think, I started working at Starbucks part-time and doing mastering part-time. And like every year I bought another piece of equipment, like on a credit card, and like was able to pay it off. And I just did that for like 5 years until I was able to kind of do it full time. Nice. And but so that's kind of how I got into that. And that's still what I do. I made a lot of connections with the Brandtson days. After I left that job, I worked at an archival facility in Pennsylvania called Iron Mountain. And I got to work on a lot of really cool stuff there. Tape machines and like really learned, like I got to see like old cutting sheets, like how, you know, like the real stuff. So like I've been fortunate in that I've gotten to experience like the top of the line engineers, and like I've gotten to meet really cool people just kind of by accident. So I've just kind of put all that stuff together, and doing that here. But anyway, like we should talk about Throes a little bit more.
Okay.
But I don't really know what to say other than like we should be promoting that, I guess. We could leave it to Matt. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really glad you like it. What you said about it, Mike and I feel like it is also completely different than it feels. Yeah, it feels like it's not a continuation of something we've been doing in the past. Yeah, I think maybe we finally just kind of found what it is, what Golden Streets is.
Did Mike have a lyrical theme that you know of?
No, I don't usually get involved in that. Part of what's fun for me is just kind of seeing the words that he repeats throughout the record and the phrases he repeats, and kind of thinking about what it could be about. But to me, it feels a little more not as inward, maybe a little more universal. Yeah. I think, and maybe a little more honest too. I don't know. I know Mike like worked very, very, very hard on the lyrics on this record. I mean, we worked hard on the whole thing, but I know he really worked really hard, and I think there's some of the best lyrics he's written, and I couldn't be happier with the way that whole thing turned out. I don't think there's a bad song on the record. Like, I think we really played to our strengths, and I'm not trying to, there's some stinkers here and there in the music that I've made in my life, but like, if this was like the last record that I made, which I don't think it's going to be, I hope it's not. But like, I would be happy as this being kind of like a defining thing for me, I don't know how Mike feels about that. I mean, he has a pretty substantial catalog. Yeah. But I know he's super proud of it too. And so we're just out there kind of just trying to get people to hear it. And the people that hear it and listen, something that was interesting to me is that just watching the streaming plays, like on the Apple Music thing or the Spotify thing or whatever, you can kind of see, it seemed like half of the listens were the record front to back. Yeah. And for me, that's like, it's not like people just listening to one or two songs over and over. It's like people are listening to the whole thing. And we put it together with that intent, was that it's kind of supposed to be an entire thing. Yeah. Like it's supposed to, this song is supposed to go here, so yeah, I think it's just people hear it and they like it, but there's so many other bands clamoring for attention. And honestly, we've had a lot of really great chances, and a lot of really good experiences. So, if this record doesn't like fucking, make top 10 lists or, sell like thousands of copies, it's okay, because like I said at the beginning of this, like, and it sounds so cheesy, but I really mean it. Like, just seeing that, like, a couple hundred people like truly listened to this record front to back and really liked it. I hope. But like that, that's, to me, that kind of makes it worthwhile.
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our theme song was written and composed by the legendary Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe on iTunes and give the show a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, click on the Patreon link at asthestorygrows.com. If you enjoyed this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.
I never felt so young and alive as when I'm diving into a tune. And now I'm learning as I listen along, and the wheels are turning, and I started a song. One good word and I'm gone. Oh, as the story grows, the more I want to know, the more I want to show you. As the story grows, as the story grows. You can create something lasting and great, something passionate and real. And I'll bring in my own good feelings, I'll sing it with meaning. Let's just attack it and never look back. It's wild and fantastic. All together at full power, we're so much better. What's that word?